Hello and welcome to the Indy Author Podcast. Today, my guest is Isabella Maldonado. Hey, Isabella, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. To give our listeners and viewers a little bit of background on you, Wall Street Journal bestselling author Isabella Maldonado wore a gun and a badge in real life before turning to crime writing. A graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico and the first Latina to attain the rank of captain in the Fairfax County Police Department just outside D.C., she retired as the commander of special investigations and forensics. During more than 2 decades on the force, her assignments included hostage negotiator, department spokesperson, and precinct commander. She uses her law enforcement background to bring a realistic edge to her writing, which includes the best-selling FBI Special Agent Nina Guerrera series, soon to be a Netflix feature film starring Jennifer Lopez, and the award-winning Detective Veranda Cruz series. And her books have been translated in 20 languages. And so I invited Isabella on the podcast to talk about choosing your publishing path. And we've had many people on the podcast talking about all different paths they've taken and why they did. And so, Isabella, I wanted to start out asking you to put yourself back when you were finishing or had finished your first book and you were deciding what you wanted to do with it. What considerations did you factor in and what choice did you make at that time?
Well, when I finished my first book, that was in 2016, and I knew at that point I wanted to be traditionally published only. That was my whole thing, because in 2016, indie publishing was definitely a thing. But I had just this idea in my mind. I'm like, I want to see my book at Barnes and Noble. I want to, authors have this dream of that kind of thing. So I just focused only on that goal, not realizing that sometimes traditional publishing isn't the perfect solution for everybody. And I didn't know. So anyway, I did manage to get a 3-book deal with a traditional publishing house, and which is really great for a totally unknown author. I had written my first book. I pitched it at a conference. Normally, the publisher is one called Midnight Inc., and that's sort of a mid-sized publishing house, but definitely traditional. And they normally did not accept any direct pitches, but when their acquiring editor was at a conference, she would take pitches. So I got in line and pitched. And she's like, definitely, yeah, I want to read this manuscript. And then I gave her the manuscript, and then I got a 3-book deal off of that, which surprised me. I mean, the speed of that was breathtaking. So I was not expecting it, and I wasn't prepared for it. And I'm just like, okay. And I signed on the dotted line. I didn't have an agent. I wasn't ready. I didn't know what I was doing. But so I went ahead and signed. And so the first book came out, and then the second book came out. And then I was just about finishing the third book in the 3-book deal when Midnight Inc. went out of business. They shut their doors and closed up shop. They were actually under the umbrella of Llewellyn Publishing, and Llewellyn still exists, but they shut down their mystery thriller imprint. So all of a sudden I was an orphan, and many authors can relate to suddenly being orphaned. And I had a quick decision to make right off the bat, because it's, do you still want us to put this book out that you now have written and we're in the process of final edits? Or do you want us to just call it quits? And I guess at that point I would probably have to repay them the advance. But I said, no, go ahead and put it out and publish it. And they did. They did publish it. That was one of the last titles that they published. So by this time, in the meantime, I had gotten myself an agent, because I realized that I needed an agent to sort of navigate. If you're going to go through the traditional publishing world, you absolutely need an agent to navigate that, in my opinion. Even I tried doing it without one, and it was not always the best thing. So I had gotten myself an agent at this point. And so I went to her and I'm like, hey, this is my situation. So then I said, I think I'd like to get my rights back to these books. And so she went to work, and it took a few months of negotiation, but she was able to get my rights back for me. So the thing about that is, when they gave the rights back, they immediately took the Kindle or ebook version. Because it had been traditionally published, it was in Barnes and Noble. So I did get to see my book. That was my dream. It was in public libraries. It was also on Nook and Apple and Kindle. I mean, it was the ebook. So it was everywhere and it was nationwide, sold nationwide. And they immediately took down the ebook version, just vanished. And there were still some print copies out there that people could order, but very soon I got a letter saying, do you want the rest of these? You have to pay for them, otherwise they're gone, whatever. So very soon, those books were completely unavailable. So at that time, I decided that I wanted to go and try another book deal. But this time I said to myself, you know what? This time I want a publishing house that won't go out of business, because I'm still thinking traditional publishing path at this point. So I thought I need one that's not going to go out of business this time, because that was painful last time.
Before
And
you go into that, can I
yeah.
just ask a quick question about that first experience? So is
Yes.
there anything you can share with authors who may be in the same position that you were in, with a publisher that goes out of business and there's having to make the decision about what you wanted them to do with your last book, but any tips you can share about getting your rights back for that?
Yeah, that was tricky. And there were other authors with the same publisher who were not as successful getting their rights back. They tried, and the publishing house didn't want to let go of their rights. I had this weird advantage that you might look at as a disadvantage to begin with. It's a weird story, but it has a happy ending. But basically, what happened is that particular imprint at that time was more of a mystery imprint, and they had a lot of cozies and things like that. And that is not what I write. I write a gritty, violent police procedural thriller. So my stuff wasn't selling as well as the cozies and the more softer, or the historicals, or the other things, the mysteries that they were selling. And I think part of it was because they weren't marketing as many authors like me. So I wasn't necessarily the best fit for them, as it turned out. So they weren't as reticent to let me get my rights back, because it was almost like they, I think, weren't sure what to do with me anyway. And my books weren't like at the top of their charts. They were selling okay, but I wasn't like their bestseller. So for that reason, and that's another reason why I think it's nice to have an agent, because an agent would have known like where to put me and would not necessarily have parked me in that location. But you live and learn. So I think that was part of the reason. It's almost other authors who were with the same house, and they had a lot of authors. Midnight Ink was putting out like 70 or so books a year. They were putting out a lot of books, like they were good sized and everything, and it was a good operation. But other authors were actually victims of their own success. So, it was harder. And we had an authors group that was writing authors, that we all got a Facebook group together. I would hear their horror stories and I felt bad. I'm like, man, they were holding on to them. But with me, it was almost like, can't get rid of you fast enough kind of thing. But it has a happy ending, because now those books are selling extremely well. But I'll get to that later. But the exact books are selling really well, insanely well. So it's okay. It was, again, it shows you how a good match and the right marketing and the right publishing strategy and the right everything will make all the difference with sales.
I did have one more question about the Midnight Ink
Sure.
experience. With 2020 hindsight, were there any red flags that either you or an agent would have seen at the time that you contracted with them for your first book, that maybe this wasn't going to be a long-term deal for the publishing company?
Actually, well, as far as the company's viability, I saw nothing that would have held me back, because again, they were the subsidiary of another company that had been publishing for over 100 years. So I thought, yeah, and they had been in the business, even with that imprint, that had been in business for many years, and they had a lot of authors that I knew and that were successful and doing well. So everything looked totally copacetic. The only red flag and this is for me personally, was just the little bit of the mismatch with, I should have seen that the majority of what they were selling was a different flavor than what I was writing. I mean, they did have some police procedural kind of gritty thrillers. They did have a few, but that was not the majority of their emphasis.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, to use another comparison, it would be like if I tried to sell my books to Harlequin or something. It wasn't the right fit for what I was writing, but I didn't realize it at the time. That's
Yep.
all. But the books were fine. But anyway, so we got the rights back, and it did take some doing, and it was a weird happenstance how that happened. So now, in the meantime, my agent negotiated another book deal for me, and this time it was with Thomas and Mercer, which is an imprint of Amazon Publishing. Because at that point, I really was happy with that deal because I told my agent, I said, you know what? I want a big publishing house next time. I don't want one that's mid-size. It's either going to be one of the big five. At the time, it was five. I think we're down to four now.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the big five, or it's going to be Thomas and Mercer or something like. I mean, that was it. And I had a proposal ready to go, and I was really happy with Thomas and Mercer because I was thinking to myself, if Amazon goes out of business, we're all in trouble. We have much bigger problems in the world than just like a publishing situation, because good grief. And so that I felt like I was comfortable with that strategy. And I knew a lot of authors who were with Thomas and Mercer, and I interviewed different authors because I had different options at the time. So I talked to authors that were with Penguin Random House. I talked with authors that were with Simon and Schuster, and so I did my background work this time, and I talked to other authors. And Thomas and Mercer was the way to go, I think. And so ended up getting a 2-book deal with Thomas and Mercer. And as it turned out, they got the 2 books, they bought them on spec, which means I had to start writing like crazy. And then in discussion with my agent, we realized that the book I was writing was now going to be reaching a much larger audience. And it was also it was like a police procedural, this time an FBI thriller. And we're like, I'm going to have a chance to reach a larger audience, and that will be the only book people can find. What about these other 3 that now are just defunct and they're unavailable anywhere? So that's when it was like, what should we do? And then I said, I knew several authors that were just really happy about being hybrid. And it was like, I'd like to go indie with these other 3 books now that I have the rights back. But I'm hot and heavy on a deadline and writing like a lunatic, and I need some help. And so my agent, bless her heart, helped me because I honestly just did not have the time, because I did learn. And this is where and again, from talking to other author friends of mine who are strictly indie authors, they informed me of the intense amount of work. It is incredible, the amount of work. And I'm like, there's no way I can do that and meet my writing deadlines.
Yeah.
So she stepped in and helped, and she became just a huge benefit to me. So I
have a bunch of other questions for you.
Yes.
So one is, it's interesting that your agent helped you self-publish your books. Did she get a cut of the proceeds?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. There's no way that you can do that kind of heavy lifting without that. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you got the rights back for your first books, did you get all the rights back, ebook,
Yes.
print, the whole
Yes.
9 yards? And then when you were talking about the fact that one of your goals originally was to have your books in Barnes & Noble, are Thomas and Mercer books in Barnes & Noble stores?
Interesting that you asked that. When I very first signed with them, they really weren't at Barnes & Noble, but what's happened is over the last couple of years, more and more they are. And what I have found happens is they don't necessarily just stock them all the time, but when I do events, they will sell my books at the events. I just did a speaking engagement a few months back, and I did a signing, and Barnes & Noble that was near the location, they brought my books there, and they brought cashiers there and set everything up, and I sold like 120 books or something there. But they had to be there, and they had to cashier and all that stuff. Because that's the other thing I learned is I had tried selling my own books a few years back, and that's something I was just like, oh my gosh, filing the taxes, getting the TPT licenses, filling out all the paperwork. It was such a headache that I'm just like, I have so much respect for the indies who do all that because filling out the forms and standing in line at the tax office and then, oh my gosh, and getting all the licenses in all the different cities and paying all the fees. And I'm just like, wow, that was overwhelming. So having Barnes and Noble do it, that's great. They can come and set up shop and sell my books. And the cool thing is, I also deal with indie bookstores. And some indie bookstores previously had not carried Thomas and Mercer books, but now they do. And so I have a relationship with several independent booksellers. One of them in Tucson is Mostly Books. Another one in Phoenix, Scottsdale area is the Poisoned Pen. Very, very famous bookstore. They will carry both series. See, they'll carry my independently published books and they'll carry the Thomas and Mercer books. And so I'll do an event and they'll sell all of them, and they're also available on their website, but they'll have the physical books on hand too. But that's more like a relationship that I worked out. And then other booksellers have done the same thing. But it's almost like you have to work out when you're an independent and you want those books sold, you have to work that out. And it's just a lot of work to do it, but you can.
I just want to clarify for anyone who might be confused that the reason I had asked specifically about the bookstores carrying Thomas and Mercer is Thomas and Mercer being an Amazon imprint. There's sometimes some bad feelings there, and bookstores generally will not carry books that they have to order from Amazon KDP, which is why I recommend that Indy Authors also have their print books available on Ingram, because it is easy for bookstores and libraries and so on to order them from Ingram. But that was the sort of the background of that question, why I asked that.
Ingram is a great way to go, but if you're doing KDP, you can't do Ingram. You know what I mean?
If you're a select, you mean?
Yeah, if you're select.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
And there's ways they can do it, but it's harder for them to do it. Yeah, I know. I've had to talk to them about that. It's a challenge. It's like an extra hurdles that they have to jump through to get the books.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're charging along. You've gotten your agent help you out with the indie side of things.
Yes. Yes. So I'm busily writing away. And so the first book comes out with Thomas and Mercer, and something I had never experienced happened. The book was selected for a Kindle First Reads, and I never knew anything about that, didn't understand it, had no idea what was going to happen with that. And so when it came out as a Kindle First Reads, it just exploded onto the scene. Within like less than 2 weeks, I had over 10,000 reviews. It just shot it was #1 on Amazon charts, #1 overall Amazon sales.
Nice.
For weeks. I never expected the book to just explode like that. And it went straight to the top. I couldn't believe it. I was in total shock. And I already had a couple of foreign rights deals for the books with foreign publishers. So that started happening right away. The book was starting to get buzz even right before it came out. And then within 2 weeks, Hollywood was calling. So everything. It's so funny because it went from like, I wasn't really getting that much traction to all of a sudden, everything just exploded onto the scene.
And this is, can you remind me, which series is this now that you're talking?
This is the Nina Guerrera series. So this was the book, The Cipher, which is book 1 in that series. That's also a 3-book series. And
that was the Thomas and Mercer?
Yes, Thomas and Mercer. And all 3 books came out already. So they're all available. So that series, it seems I've been writing trilogies with that. That's just been what's happening. So when that happened, people were clamoring for more books. And actually, it was funny because I saw the reviews and everything, and several people were saying, oh, this is a great debut novel. And I'm like, it looks like it was, because the other ones weren't ready yet. We were still in the process of trying to pull it together because it takes a long time to get your stuff ready. And so at that point, that just accelerated our desire to get the other books out there, because other people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to wait 10 months for the next book to come out. And isn't there anything else I can read by this author? I love this book, yada, yada. So it just really kicked it into high gear, and we worked really hard. But part of it is that with the formatting, everything had to be completely reformatted, because that was the other thing. When we got the rights back, the digital rights, we were prohibited from using their formatting. We could not. So when I say we got all the rights back, that's for all the different versions, but we did not get the rights to their formatting. So they had to all be redone.
Probably cover design, right?
And cover design, we actually went to the same cover designer and we hired him and had to pay him to redo the covers and whatnot to make them work for us. So that had to happen. And it was again, it was just every little part of it. And in the meantime, because the cipher was so successful, my agent all of a sudden was able to turn around and sell audiobook rights to Tantor. Because before there wasn't enough traction and there had never been an audio version before. So then I was quickly trying to get everything ready so they could develop a script to have the narrator work on that. It was like all of a sudden everything was just really crazy. But we did get it out there. And so now there's an audiobook version of those three, and there never had been before. And I love the narrator, and she's so talented, and it's just wonderful. But that was an unexpected. I didn't know that was going to happen either.
So how much did your cover designer have to change the cover from the one he had originally done for Midnight Ink?
The second two books, he did not have to change as much, but he did have to alter, he had to put in the new font and stuff. We kept the titles the same. I didn't want to change the titles. But the cover of the first book was radically different from the second two. You know how a lot of times, and I think it is a good idea if you have your covers they have a uniform look about them with each series. And so it was weird because the second two had one look and the first one had a totally different look. So we said we need to completely redo the first cover. The second one we just need to refresh, but the first one needs to match the second two. So that was a total redesign from scratch. And it looks really good. I'm really proud of that cover. It looks really beautiful and it matches the other two, and it all makes sense now in a way that it never did before. Because I think what happened is that Midnight Ink hired a new cover designer for the second two, and that's why they have one look and the first one doesn't. So I think that's what happened. So we corrected something that had always bothered me, that those three did not look like a uniform fit.
And then my other question about what you had been saying before was the Kindle First Reads. So can you describe what that looks like from an author point of view? Like, is the royalty setup different? What do you get and give up by being part of the Kindle First Reads deal?
Exactly. I don't know if indie authors, I don't know if that works at all with indie authors. I'm not sure, but it's always an option. And it's designed, I think, mainly to get attention, especially on newer authors like I was at the time, that didn't have a huge following, to get them to get the attention that they've never had. And so it does put a lot more eyeballs on it. And so what they do is they will give you an option and then you sign a contract and they will pay you a set fee, and that is what you get. It doesn't matter whether you sell one copy or a million copies. This is the money you get, period. And it's different from your advance. When I saw that I had that option and I found out that you get all this exposure, then I thought that's really perfect for me. And I was happy to sign it. I was absolutely thrilled to sign that. And it was the right move because I didn't have a huge following. And so it's not like Michael Connolly puts out a new book and everybody has it on pre-order. It's not like that. That wasn't me. So I'm like, I just need eyeballs. I felt like the story's good, but I just need people to see it. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. People saw it, they fell in love with it, and it just exploded. But honestly, looking back now, if I had gone with a different route, then the exact same story may never have gotten the traction because it simply didn't have the exposure.
Yeah.
That's all.
It would be interesting to be in the back rooms of Thomas and Mercer, that if they had books 2 and 3 ready to go and they made the first one a Kindle First Read, and then a month later they released the second one, and a month after that they released the third one, so that everybody's getting the immediate bang from the 10,000 happy reviewers. I wonder if that was ever a consideration for them, or they just knew that there was going to be a period of time where people would be clamoring for it, but it wouldn't be quite ready for them yet.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if they were ever in a situation where they had multiple books. I wonder what they would do. I know they have a schedule and they can only get a certain number of books out per year because their team has to work on everything. That is another difference, obviously, between traditional publishing and being an indie. If you're an indie, you can put a book out every 2 weeks if you want to. Hey, it's great. That's one of the freedoms and the beauty of being an indie. And actually, that is what I did with my indie route, is I put out the books like right all together. It was fantastic. But and it's fun to do that if they're ready in the can and ready to go. But with Thomas and Mercer, in my case, the second book wasn't written. So there was no
Yeah.
possibility of doing that. But if they did have an author that they got that's like, hey, I've already written these books, they've been sitting waiting to be published, that's an interesting question. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Yeah.
that. But it's intriguing. But I know they won't let you publish but so many books per year because of their own editing schedule and stuff. There's certain limits, but I don't know what the limit is. So I guess if there's authors out there that have a bunch of titles and they think they want to go that route, I think they would probably have to be on a schedule of some sort, but I don't know what that would be. I guess part of the negotiation.
Yeah.
But they would have to be unpublished. So as I was working through the first series, so I'll call the second series, the part of the cipher, I'll call that the FBI series, the FBI Guerrera series. And then the first one was a police detective series. So I'll call it the Cruz. It was Detective Cruz. But so the first series, the Detective Cruz series, I was getting all those ready, and it ended up happening that the cipher was published in November of 2020. And then the Cruise series, all three of them came out in March or April of 2021. So it took about 6 months to have them ready to go in a format that I really was happy about. And we also wanted to time it so that the audiobook versions came out at the same time too, because they had to turn it into a script and then turn it into it. So we wanted to just have it be a big release. And the nice thing is, because of the readership and fan base that had been established because of the cipher, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't competing with myself. And that's another thing too, talking with Thomas and Mercer and Amazon Publishing to let them know that we were putting these books out, and they were fine with it, but it worked really beautifully because I didn't want to compete with the sequel to the cipher, which came out in August. So it was perfect that there was like this big lag time in between, and it worked. I don't think it would have worked as well if I had them come out at the same time as book two. That would have been a mistake. So we didn't want to make that mistake. We made sure they came out separately, and they just immediately started selling extremely well, because I do think there was this built up demand that was formed by the other book. And it was really something. But there was still a built up demand for book two in the FBI Guerrera series, because when book two came out, that immediately became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And so that sold extremely well also. And then got another bump with the indie books also. So every time that one of the other ones came out, there was a bump across the board in all sales for everything.
It does seem as if the sort of magic combination is some traditionally published books, because you're bringing to bear all the marketing, promotion, distribution, et cetera, benefits. And then indie publishing, because all that, as exactly as you're saying, all that excitement about the traditionally published books and their wide reach will lead people to your indie published books. But I think that the real trick would be coordinating the writing of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I would like to write another book in the Cruise series, but I find that I am absolutely busy on the new things that I'm working on. It's a real challenge. And I am working on dealing with my ADHD. Trying to focus is a nightmare. And I'm actually working on trying to streamline my writing process, because I'm also kind of a hybrid writer in the sense of plotting and pantsing. I'm a ploncer, if that makes any sense. So I have plot points that I make sure I hit along the way, but there's a lot of pantsing that goes along, which means there's a lot of rewriting, which is frustrating me. So I'm trying to be better about developing a system for my writing to make it more efficient. And I have so much respect for my indie writer friends that like put out a book every 2 or 3 months. I'm like, how do you do it? And they just get it done. And I'm like, that's incredible. That's a discipline I'm working on getting. Because I was talking to another friend of mine that's another traditionally published author, and she's an amazing best-selling author, does really great. But it was funny, she and I were talking about our writing process, and we both have the same problem. And my joking way of putting it, and she agreed completely, was I said, the tragedy is that I write 3 books a year, but I only publish one.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
That's all the rewriting that goes on. It's, oh my gosh, I throw out tens of thousands of words with each book. It's like, so clearly I'm capable of producing a lot more if I had a better system. So this time around, so I'm working on a new series now. And this one's set in New York City, and it's a completely FBI thriller, but it's a style that I've never written before. It's really out there. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But now I'm working on trying to streamline that process with the second one, because there's another, that'll be the beginning of another series. And by the way, this has also worked out really well to my advantage because they put out an announcement in Publishers Weekly that this new series is coming out and it'll be ready in May of next year. Actually, the pub date's May 23rd of next year. And as soon as the announcement went out, my Hollywood agent started getting phone calls. So there is already interest. And I ended up giving them a first draft so that they could read through it. And so there's already interest from multiple places. So it looks like there might be the possibility of another movie from another book. So it's kind of fun. But
So
we'll
I
see.
definitely want to talk about that. I didn't know if there were steps in the publishing process you wanted to hit between what you've already told us and talking a bit about these movie deals. Any other points you want to hit during that period?
I think it was more than anything just the challenge and the joy of working between different aspects. For me personally, and talking with my agent, we did a lot of soul searching, and we decided to go the KDP route, so Kindle Direct Publishing. I might have made a different choice if I weren't being published by Thomas and Mercer, but it's Amazon Publishing that is a traditional publisher, and they're doing all that. And so I thought, since that's my publishing house for the other series, then I'm willing to do KDP for this series. But it limits you in the sense that, like, you can't get a Nook. It's not available on Nook. There's some other places. But I just thought strategically that was the way to go. And I'm happy with it. I am very pleased with that decision. So it's almost like I have my home there, and it's been very good. And as a matter of fact, KDP even has a few hardcover options. And by invitation, they would ask if you wanted to participate there was like a pilot program. And so we're like, oh yeah, absolutely. Because I also wanted my hardcover books to be available in libraries and some other places, because I think they're working on their relationship with libraries too. And it's getting there. And so there's more of that available than there used to be.
And I
That's
just want to clarify the terminology, because I think what you're saying is that you decided to go with KDP Select, meaning that your books are in Kindle Unlimited,
Yes, they
whereas
are.
KDP, Amazon KDP, is a service that's available to any indie author and would not necessarily limit them using other platforms, as long as they didn't check the exclusivity option when they were using KDP.
You're right. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. And that is exactly right. Yeah. Because the strategy was I wanted these books in Kindle Unlimited because my other ones were available in Kindle Unlimited. And then also with the pricing, I wanted to set the price point as low as I could, but there's certain restrictions on that with expanded distribution, which I wanted the expanded distribution. So that means you have to choose different options for that. But I wanted to try to match the prices of the first series to what Thomas and Mercer was putting on the prices for the new series. So that way my customers would see same price points all the way across, and they're quite reasonable. All of my books are available in Kindle Unlimited, and all of them, if you're not part of Kindle Unlimited, the ebook versions are all $4.99. And the paperback's available for $11.99 for all of my books, but Amazon will put them on sale occasionally, especially the ones that they're publishing. They'll run a special. I have no idea when that's going to happen. And the hardcovers are like $14.95, which is really good for a
That is
hardcover.
very good.
It's really good. And audiobooks, like I'm looking right now, I can see Blood's Echo, which is the one that's the first series. Tantor, they're the ones that set the price for that. So I see that's $18.37, but you can get it if you're part of Audible, you can get it with their membership with a credit. So I like the fact that it's one-stop shopping that way. I have only had a few fans that have written and they've been like, I have a Nook and I'd like to get your books, but I can't. And I feel bad. I have to say, it's just not available there. But unfortunately, that's how it is. But they can get the Audible version, but they can't, get the e version of them. So,
Right. So then you were able to venture into movies.
yeah.
I know we could spend an entire episode just on that topic, but just maybe the Reader's Digest condensed version of your movie experience.
Again, like everything else, it took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it. When The Cipher came out in November of 2020, almost immediately my agent got calls. And as it turns out, I have a literary agent in New York, but she works with a Hollywood agent in LA. And the Hollywood agent is affiliated with CAA. And they got together with me, and there was a lot of interest. There was a lot of fire around this, a lot of heat. There were multiple parties that were interested. We're getting multiple offers. And so I had to take multiple phone calls from the different parties involved, trying to see what each person's vision was. And it got very competitive. And as a matter of fact, it was kind of funny because one of the other production companies, it's the production companies that expressed the interest. And so one of them ended up joining forces, like a producer director got with a production company, and then they came together. It was interesting because they wanted to make it a TV series, and then the other one wanted to make it a feature film, which is interesting because it's like that's a whole kettle of fish. And I was happy to have counsel from people who were experts in the industry to help guide me because, I didn't know a lot. I knew nothing. But the one that ended up winning out was Nuyorican Productions, that's J-Lo's production company. A lot of these huge stars have their own production companies. I mean, that's kind of the norm for when you're really a big star. Nuyorican Productions, they were like, we're determined to get this. We want to win this bid. And so I remember this sort of surreal moment when they told me, they said, you know what, we're going to send this book to J-Lo to read. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Jennifer Lopez is reading my book. Because, and this was, like I said, this was in 2020. And the funny part is they did not know this, but in 2018, I was in Las Vegas watching J-Lo on stage. Okay. So I was like, I had been in the audience, and I'm like, okay, this is surreal. I'm watching her on stage. And then 2 years later, she's reading something I wrote. I'm like, this is crazy. I can't believe my life is going like this. It was an amazing, wonderful moment. And then very quickly, they called back and said, okay, not only does she want this, but she wants it for herself. She wants to star. And Netflix is going to make an offer for a feature film, not for a series, because they do both. And so they just brought in the best deal, and they just really brought in their A game. And at that point, it was like game, set, match. So it was fantastic. So the way that works is you sign, and it takes about 6 months to work out the contract. And then you sign the contract, and it's an 18-month option, meaning that they need to start filming by the end of the option. Or if they don't, then they have to decide if they want to option it again. So it's 2022 now, because we ended up signing the contract it was like June of 2021, because it takes 6 months to, all these attorneys have to agree. And there's attorneys from Netflix and attorneys from CAA, and the contract is many, many, many pages long, and all kinds of different clauses and everything. So that's when we ended up signing. So it was coming up, and I was super excited to tell you that they just re-upped the contract again. So I think they really do intend to make it. I was warned about how many times things happen and these things fall through. You just don't know. Unpredictable things occur, and you can't tell. In the movie industry, strange things happen, and all of a sudden a deal just goes away or whatever, but they literally just re-upped it. And as a matter of fact, there was some sort of announcement. Netflix put an announcement out about Jennifer Lopez's upcoming new thing. I think Mother is in post-production. See, I've had to learn all these Hollywood words, post-production. So I think that's in post-production. I think she's shooting Atlas right now, and then I think The Cipher's next. So, that's
Nice.
but it was mentioned again. So that means it's definitely on their radar and everything. Again, barring any unforeseen disaster, we're still on track. So I'm super happy, considering all the horror stories I've heard about all this stuff. And so now the process is just beginning with the new book that I have. It's called A Killer's Game, and that one's coming out next May. And so it was a similar thing where I had to give them a first draft. And once I did that, then some production companies expressed an interest. So we're just in the very beginning stages of that. So I think there'll probably be some interviews with some production companies, and then we'll see what happens with that. But the interesting thing about that, there might, and this is really fascinating, but there might end up, I don't know, there could be a deal before the book comes out. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But that would be really amazing. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Isabella, this could definitely turn into a 2-hour conversation, but
Yes.
I don't want to impinge on your time. But it was so interesting. Obviously, the path you've taken has led to some great things. And I love sharing different paths that authors take and how it's been for them. And I appreciate you so much sharing that detail. So please let the listeners and viewers know where they can go to find out more about you online.
I would recommend going to my website, www.isabellamaldonado.com. That is the best place. And another place is obviously my Amazon author page, because I recommend anyone that's doing that have an Amazon author page. That's another good place to find me. So those are the two best places. From there, you can see links to all my social media and my newsletter and all the other stuff that is going on. And actually, and by the way, the Cipher now has over 38,000 reviews on Amazon.
Very nice.
Yeah. So again, it's just crazy how much that has taken off, but it really does help. And for a hybrid author, I do think there is some sort of wonderful magic that occurs that is a mix between the two, and it works really well.